Bloody hell, that was a bit intense, wasn't it? So I cobbled that little intro together yesterday in preparation for today, the book launch day of Dark Matter, dark science fiction collection, 6 short stories. So today there's only one link down below, and that is the link to the book. So if this takes your fancy, please consider purchasing one. So we've got the Kindle version first of all, £2.99 in the British sterling. Yes, or if you're with Kindle Unlimited, it's free to read. And we've also got the paperback version, which is £5.99. So yeah, what are you getting for your money? So it's around 35,000 words, so around about the third of the size of the other books I've released. But it's jam-packed, and so what I'm going to do is talk about the stories individually, just to wet your whistle a little bit, just to get the juices flowing and see if it's something that you might want to read. I ended up putting it on. I ended up publishing it on Wednesday, but I didn't tell anyone because I wanted to leave it for today. But lo and behold, 1 hour after I put it on there, someone over in India started reading it. I started getting excited. Unfortunately, they only read 4 pages, which amounted to a royalty of 1 penny. Oh yeah. I thought maybe that would start an avalanche of purchases, but no more. But Chris Cullen, friend of the channel, also known as Dick Splash, he bought a copy yesterday. So he's the first genuine purchaser of the book. So please follow in his footsteps, if you will, and see if you like it. But anyway, let's get on with it. I'll talk about each one just very briefly. First of all, I'm going to pop up. This is the back cover of the print edition, and you'll notice the order of the stories. It forms a quite pleasing shape, and that's what determined the order of the stories as they appear in the book. It's quite an arbitrary way of ordering stories, but actually it worked out really well. Because there's 2 of the stories that are told in first person. I didn't want those next to each other, so they're not by some quirk of fate. But anyway, let's talk about each one in turn and see if you like them. So the first one is Last Man. So this is about an astronaut called Commander Eric Wilson, who's setting up the first permanent base on the moon, along with 5 of his other colleagues. And he finds something in an uncharted crater of the moon. It isn't good what he finds, and he's already slightly off kilter anyway, but this sends him quite berserk, and he, traumatizes his fellow astronaut. But that's all I'll say. I'm only going to give little kind of tasters, I suppose. But yeah, that's the very first science fiction short story I ever wrote. I wrote it a year and a half ago, maybe almost 2 years ago, for a writing competition. And it was for an anthology of short stories of a darker nature, science fiction wise. My story wasn't picked. Unfortunately, I only knew about the competition a couple of days in advance, so I had to belt it out in 2 days. So it was definitely rough around the edges. But anyway, I've since polished it into quite a nice story, I think. So anyway, that's what began this idea of making a book of short stories. The next one on the list is one called Apartment. This follows a young woman called Sophie, who's a housewife, I suppose you could say, but it's in the distant future. It's a couple of 100 years in the future. And her and her husband are living in a kind of luxury apartment. And everything in this apartment's done for you. So if you finish your day, you take your clothes off, just chuck them on the floor, go and have a shower. When you come back, the clothes have already been picked up, washed, pressed, and returned to the drawer from which they came. And at a certain point in the story, Sophie starts wondering how the hell this is happening, because no one ever questions how these things happen. And so she begins to investigate. Let's just say her investigations don't do any good. But I won't say what happens to her or what she discovers. It's a bit chilling, I would just say that. Okay, the third story is Testament. So like the story Last Man, this is told in first person, and this is my personal favourite. It's quite a short story. It's only 4,000 words perhaps, but it's about the last man on Earth pretty much after an alien apocalypse. So there's been an alien invasion. It's set in the 1980s in England. So a quaint English little town. And the chap that's recounting the story is a GP, a general practitioner, a doctor. And he's telling his story about how the hell everything's gone to hell, basically, and speculates about what, because it's all very strange. I'm not going to say anything more than that, but the aliens are very abstract, and they don't necessarily know that we're even there at all. But the consequences of them visiting us means that everyone goes mad, except for this doctor. And so the story is about him. So you're reading what he's writing on the outside of his house, basically. He's writing it in like permanent marker. So you're reading that. Testament, the last testament to humanity. Okay, there's that one. The next one is called Wonderworld. Now, Wonderworld was inspired by a dream I once had. And so basically, in a nutshell, it's about 3 teenagers who discover a portal to a kind of strange fractured tunnel that leads to different worlds. And the last world they find is they're skateboarders, so it's a kind of skater's paradise that they discover. It's like an empty city, an alien city. There's nothing there, but it's a prime place to do a bit of skateboarding. Anyway, it's very, very odd. And the further their curiosity takes them into this world, the more a kind of danger lurks. They don't realise it's there. Again, I'm not going to say what it is or what happens to them, but it isn't pleasant. Now, that story was kind of inspired by a couple of things, really. One of my favourite stories of all time, The Inverted World by Christopher Priest. And The Dream. Incidentally, the other story, I forgot to say, Testament, about the doctor recounting his story, that was influenced by another dream and also the work of John Wyndham, Midwich Cuckoos. I was kind of channeling that kind of old science fiction of the 60s. A lot of these are informed by that kind of bias that I have for older science fiction. Okay, the next one is called The Fairfield Seekers. This is a very short story, but it's about, because I've always been interested in UFOs, the possibility that we're being observed even now. And I was obsessed as a teenager, and I used to buy magazines and read about alien encounters and various paraphernalia of that nature. But now, of course, with the internet, there's a lot of conspiracy theories and a lot of craziness mixed in with all of this. And so I wanted to write a little bit about that, and about a man that has a genuine encounter with a UFO, but when he's trying to seek answers afterwards about what happened to him, he only encounters these kind of crackpots that don't really believe in UFOs, but are just following it because they're kind of lost in their own lives. What he encounters bit further beginning is a group that are genuine. They're called the Fairfield Seekers. This is the only story I've written that actually it's set in America somewhere. Fairfield, wherever that is. I plucked it out of thin air on Google Maps. So yeah, there's that one. Again, this one has a dark ending, a very dark ending, apocalyptic ending. So you get the general feeling of what's going on with these stories. The very last one, The Children of Trappist 5, is another one that was inspired by a dream. So I have lots of dreams, and occasionally there's fragments of dreams that I think would make a good story. So this was used or heavily based on that. So this is about a distant human colony on a far world. So it's we currently understand that around the star of Trappist, it's called Trappist 1, there may be a habitable planet there. Trappist 5, the 5th planet in that solar system. So I've based it on that. So the journey that humanity's had to take to get to this place is around 900 years. So it wasn't expected to succeed, but it did. But anyway, the ship that took humanity to this far world didn't contain any humans on it, just embryos. And so then the embryos were then raised on this planet into adulthood to form the very last colony of humanity. Earth is dead. But the problem is, what they're having to deal with is a very inhospitable world. So the gravity is far greater than here on Earth. The air is only just breathable, and they have to supplement what they breathe with a kind of regulator. So they've got to breathe oxygen occasionally just to survive. But the worst thing about being on this world, there's also various aliens that are always trying to kill them, is that they have never been able to naturally procreate. So they've never been able to create children that haven't come from these, call them womb factories. So once all the embryos that they've carried from Earth are depleted, then humanity is just going to bite the dust. And so this is about why this is happening, perhaps, but also at the very beginning of the story, the protagonist, Aidan, discovers a human child in the woods, in this alien woodland. So there's a child. There shouldn't be a child. I mean, humanity's dying out on this world. So where's this child from? What does it mean? All the while, the colony is being protected by this matriarchal android. And so it could be something to do with this android that's ailing them. But who knows? I'm not going to say anything. You'll have to read it. Okay, so there we are. So at the very end, I've done a note from me, which I often do with my books. And in this one, I talk about each story in turn with a bit more detail than I have here today about the influences that inspired these various stories and what I was trying to communicate through them. And then after that, there's the usual thanks. I've got lots of people to thank. But it's all in the book. So if you're watching this, I'll probably be thanking you. Not all of you, but yeah, you'll see. But anyway, yeah, please do dive in if you wish. If you want a signed copy from me, I would recommend perhaps buy an ebook version, just so that it's logging these sales, if there are any. And then I'll send you a copy as well, okay? One that's signed. Yeah, so there we are. Let's leave it at that. I was going to say something else. What was that? Oh, yes, that's what I was going to say. So with the previous books, I always get the Geldometer out, don't I? And we chart how the books have been selling. So what I'll do in the new year, I'll dust off the old Geldometer wherever the damn thing is, and we'll see how the book's been doing. I'm quite realistic about its chances, to be honest, because I never self-promote these things other than on here, and I'll put something on Facebook and bloody whatever, Instagram. Never really does anything. So if you like it and you think someone else will like it, recommend it, please. And also perhaps review it on Amazon, or give it a rating, maybe. All of these things increase its potential to be seen by other people. I've dallied with the Amazon bastard algorithm with advertising. I end up paying through the nose and getting nowhere with it. So I'm not going to advertise it this time. So there we are. Let's leave it there. I think all that's left to say is cheerio and say goodbye, Sir Percival.
I want to speak into the microphone.
You can't come down from there, you silly old man. What the hell are you doing? What are you doing? Get away from the microphone.
I want to show you my wand.
No one wants to see your filthy magic wand.
Oh, there it is.
Devil! Now, please, Sir Percival, stop being naughty. Please buy my book.